Annual Virtual Public Health Symposium. As some of y'all know, this meeting is going to be recorded for future purposes. My name is Bethany Nguyen, and I am the current Eta Sigma Gamma President, 2023-24 President of the Eta Sigma Gamma Delta Rho chapter here at Cal State Fullerton. If you did not know, Eta Sigma Gamma is a nationally recognized health education honor society that helps university students learn professional development skills and introduce them to the wide field of public health. We started hosting these public health symposiums. We started back in 2022 to learn from current health professionals across California, share knowledge, and educate our fellow future healthcare professionals. Moving on, I would like to emphasize that this year's theme for the symposium is promoting and protecting emotional well-being in public health. I would like to give a special thanks to our sponsors, speakers, and student presenters here today who have made time to help us spread awareness and advocacy about these issues. We are honored to have you here today. I would also like to thank the Department of Public Health here at Cal State Fullerton for aiding in the promotion of this event. Just for future reference for today, we would love if you guys could have your cameras on. It's super engaging and energizing for our speakers, our student presenters to see your faces and not just blank screens. So we highly encourage it. Please also let me introduce the string of amazing people who have helped make this symposium possible, including myself. We have our ESG Executive Board, Vice President Vanessa Salome, Treasurer and Secretary Brittany Chen, Historian and ICC Representative Mia Hansen, and Event Corner Lena Dung. I would also like to give a special thanks and honorary welcome to our faculty advisor, Dr. Lahu Mamudu, along with our two symposium directors, Dr. Portia Jackson Preston and Dr. Pimbusha Rasmi Vichentong. Thank you all. I would like now to pass on the spotlight to the CSUF Department of Public Health Chair, Dr. Lilia Espinosa.
Good morning, everyone. As Bethany had said, my name is Lilia Espinosa. I'm the acting chair of the Department of Public Health, and I'm covering while our esteemed chair, Dr. Michelle Wood, is on sabbatical. First, I want to extend a hearty thanks to ESG and the symposium directors for organizing and putting on these symposia that have been, as they had mentioned, have been going on for a few years now. Also, I want to give a hearty welcome to everybody who is joining today's symposium. I love seeing in the chat how people are chiming in from different parts of the country. So welcome, and thank you for being a part of this. Personally, I'd love to say that years ago, I was one of the faculty mentors for Eta Sigma Gamma, the Delta Rho chapter here at Cal State Fullerton. And never did I imagine that the ESG chapter and the members would be putting on symposia like these. I'm very proud, and I mean that honestly, I'm very proud of ESG for organizing these symposia. And I give my heartfelt thanks to the symposia directors. And so that's specifically Dr. Lahua Mamudu, Dr. Pimbucha Rasmi Vishantang, and Dr. Portia Jackson Preston. Today, we're going to hear from a variety of speakers that are going to speak on this theme, which is promoting emotional well-being in public health. It's promoting and protecting emotional well-being in public health. For those of you who may not be able to attend the entire event, this event is being recorded and we will have it uploaded and available for you on our website. So today, as I had mentioned, we have a variety of speakers, one of whom is our former chair, Dr. Sora Park Tanjasiri, who is now at UC Irvine. And we have two other speakers. Or a few other speakers. So we have Dr. Heather Readhead, Dr. Adam Readhead, as well as Miss Amanda Wilson-Eck. So thank you all for taking time for being here today, and enjoy the symposium.
Thank you so much, Dr. Espinosa. We're now going to finally start our day. You'll probably see people trickling in throughout the day, so don't be startled by that. I want to start off our day with our first speaker session theme, which is promoting and protecting emotional well-being in public health, specifically mental health, wellness, cancer, and chronic disease. Our Vice President, Vanessa Salome, will now introduce our first session of speakers.
Thank you, Bethany. It is my pleasure to introduce our three guest speakers focusing on the wellness and mental health element of the symposium. We will first be hearing from Dr. Heather Readhead after completing her public health degree at UCLA and medical school at Penn State University. She completed her family medicine residency at Columbia University New York Presbyterian Hospital and her preventative medicine residency with the California Department of Public Health. Dr. Heather Readhead has worked for both state and local health departments for chronic disease and injury prevention, communicable disease, occupational and environmental health. During the COVID-19 pandemic, her work focused on outbreak prevention and management in the workplaces, correctional facilities, and homeless shelters. Post-pandemic, Dr. Readhead is focused on improving the real-time data exchange necessary to understand and address equity and outcomes for public health intervention. We also have Dr. Adam Readhead, an epidemiologist with 20 years of experience in public health in both international and domestic settings. He has worked in a variety of areas, including communicable and non-communicable disease epidemiology, large-scale clinical trials, and evaluation of national and local programs. Dr. Readhead received his PhD in epidemiology from UCLA and his master's degree in epidemiology from Tulane University.
Okay, hi everybody. Can you hear me all right? Okay, sorry, it took me a minute to screen share there. So thank you very much for the warm welcome and for the introduction. I do want to reiterate that although I am a primary care physician by training, I started my career in public health. I actually did my MPH prior to going to med school, which anyone who's done an MPH, of course, has knows that it colors your view of the world forever going forward. And so I can't even say I was the typical med student, because I would sit there and lecture and say, no, but our health system is not the best. No, Cuba does this better. Costa Rica does this better. You know, there's all these health nations in the world that spend less money and get better outcomes. So again, you know, even at that what looks like a young age or felt like a young age now looking back, I was very changed by my public health training. And so although, again, I am a family physician, I still do primary care and urgent care. At the core of my being and the core of my professional self, I am a public health person. And I have spent many years in and out of public health, sometimes working full-time for public health departments, and sometimes consulting, and sometimes working on very specific targeted projects that were funded by other organizations, private organizations like First Five or American College of Preventive Medicine. So, you know, the nice thing about public health is there are many different routes to doing this work and to this career. At a later time or at it offline, I'm certainly happy to connect about some of those. So today I'm going to talk about emotional well-being. And I think oftentimes we are better at talking about what emotional well-being is not, right? When we talk about maybe severe physical illness or pain, severe psychiatric illness, severe anxiety, depression, we are more in touch with when emotional well-being is not intact. We also are, I think, getting better as a society about talking about the lack of balance, right? Like we're not getting enough sleep, we're not doing exercise, we're not eating healthy, we're not drinking enough water, or maybe we're using substances and using them too often. We also, I think, are better about talking about balance. And I say talking about it because I'm not sure that we've actually fully addressed or corrected all these things, but we are better about talking about balance, working too many hours, having too much stress, whether that's at work or at home in our neighborhoods, perhaps financial stress. I think that's a common one we hear about right now with inflation and cost of home prices and housing. And then we also, I think, are aware of particularly high-risk times for when that lack of balance is perhaps rather profound. And Those are rather big changes in life, or too many changes in life sometimes. Not that change can be very exciting, but it can be very challenging. And it's not always sad changes, you know, it's not always a death or an end of a chapter in our life, or a loss of a job, or a loss of a house, or something like that. It's not always just the sad changes that are big changes and cause this kind of stress or lack of balance. Sometimes they're very happy ones, like, for example, having a baby or having small children. Those are, by most people's standards, very happy events, but they cause a lot of stress, and they cause a lot of extra work, and they can greatly disrupt a balance that you've tried many years perhaps to establish. So these are moments in time, or eras in our life, where emotional well-being can really greatly suffer. And again, it's not always because of bad things. Sometimes it's because of happy things and happy changes. But the stress is still there, the changes are still there, and the emotional well-being, in fact, can greatly suffer. So I also want to touch on other things that we commonly think of with emotional well-being, recognizing that emotional well-being is beyond our basic needs. So basic needs being food, clothing, shelter, basic health, perhaps you might put in there basic health care. Those are things that it's very difficult to have emotional well-being if you don't have those in place. Now, can you be without those a little bit for a little bit of time and weather it just fine? Absolutely, right? You can have inadequate food for a period of time. You can have not the greatest clothing or lack of clothing for a period of time. You could even be unhoused and couch surfing or something like that for a period of time. So there are things, and we all have gone through health, right, where we have a period of time where we're not at our healthiest. So it's not that we can't have some challenge to our basic needs and weather that just fine. But when those things go too long, right, then it can greatly and profoundly affect our emotional well-being. I also want to address that we at baseline usually think of emotional well-being as being the absence of certain things as well, like the absence of bullying, abuse, shame, guilt, intense pain. Anyway, those intense risk factors we also think of as having, or as being critical, that we have not a lot of those in our life. And again, the balance and managing whatever risk factors have come into our life, or whatever high risk times. And overall, we often have resilience to weather many of those things. But when we get to the point where it's more than we can handle, that's really where we suffer, our emotional well-being suffers. And with that, we can also greatly have a loss of a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of contribution and appreciation, or feeling that others appreciate us, that our work is appreciated, our role in society, our role in our family. All of those things are perhaps not feeling like they're being appreciated. And why it's important to call that out is that's a part of the balance. It's a part of our emotional well-being, is that we do inherently feel some sort of sense of belonging, purpose, contribution, and appreciation. And when that is gone, that's part of our resilience that's gone. And then suddenly things that normally challenges we might be able to handle, we no longer can handle as well. And suddenly our resilience is not enough, and it's more than we can handle. So now I'm going to skip to what is public health, because why all of this talk about emotional well-being? Why all of this talk about resilience? We're used to talking about it in terms of the communities we serve in public health and the clients we serve in public health, but we're maybe not as comfortable as applying it to ourselves as public health professionals. So why do we need to protect and promote public health workers, or safety and wellness in public health workers? Well, generally, public health is about changing things that are wrong with our society. It's fundamentally, whether or not you like to think of it this way, it's fundamentally a type of fight or a type of war. We are trying to change things that we don't like and that we think could be better in our society. Everybody's heard probably of Johnson's War on Poverty. And I pull that out here just to remind us all that this is not a new war. This was a war on poverty that people were talking about in the 1950s and 1960s. So that phrase is not new and the concept is not new. We talk about health inequities that we're trying to change, social justice that we're trying to promote. Fundamentally, we want poor health to be better. We want that physical, emotional, spiritual, financial well-being for all people in our society to be better. And we want to fundamentally change those health threats, whether they're structural threats, like how we build cities, how we, drive cars, how we build our, and where we build things like our schools and our healthcare facilities or parks. So structural problems in our society, institutional policy issues in our society, and then certainly environmental ones. And all of those are incredibly hard to change, right? Just environmental ones. Think about what it takes to stop polluting. How many companies, how many policies do you have to come up against, and how much hard work is there just to change environmental pollutants that perhaps we've known already for 20 or 30 years cause great health effects, damaging effects on people. So in the end, public health is a type of war. And again, we're peace-loving people, we're social justice-loving people. We don't like to think of ourselves as soldiers or warriors, but I think that if we realize this about the work that we are doing, then we suddenly become much more aware of how much we need to be protected and be supported. So when we think about soldiers, think about how much energy, how much motivation, how much resilience do soldiers need? They need to trust their team. They need a very competent and interdisciplinary team, right? No soldier can do everything that is required. They have to have, 10, 15, 20 different types of team members, different teams to support the work that they are doing. They need sleep, they need food, they need supplies. They need sustained funding. They need good management, and they also need inspiring leadership. And I think if you look at this list, that is 110% true of public health as well. So again, maybe we don't like the word soldiers, we don't like to think about war, but if we look and use this framework, then I think we are suddenly much more aware of how much support and what the similarities are in terms of what public health workers need and what soldiers that are sent to the front line need. In this same vein, you can imagine how easy it is to come across burnout. When you're asking people to do really hard things, to make really hard changes in society, you also run the risk that they will have a lot of burnout, because it's hard to maintain that confidence. It's hard to maintain that hope, the motivation, resilience. So what all goes into hope? We've got to believe in our work. We've got to believe in our leadership, believe in our team. Maybe we don't believe in all those things at the same time, but we need to believe in at least one or two of them at the same time in order to have that hope and to not get burned out. We need to believe that there's some support there, that this success just might be possible, right? Or otherwise we lose the hope. Some of that is institutional support. And so that's funding, that's infrastructure, operations, feeling like my health department is going to continue this funding in order to continue the staff that's needed to do the work, that they are going to have appropriate infrastructure, whether that's data infrastructure, IT infrastructure in order to help us do our work. And that the operations, that we're going to have people that are going to in HR and that are managing grants and contracts, and that they're going to be able to execute on things in a timely enough way so that we don't get a 3-year grant and then we spend 2 years of it just getting the contract in place, right? There has to be some effective operations in order to also support the work that we do. And lastly, but perhaps even most importantly, is personal support. I think most of us are probably familiar with basic worker protections and all of those things that OSHA and Cal OSHA afford us as workers. And in the pandemic, this became very obvious with making sure that we had masking, right? Appropriate masks to protect us if we were in person at work, that we had testing to catch outbreaks early and try to keep us as a healthy workforce in a pandemic. But perhaps things that you're not as familiar with are things like boundaries on work hours, access to childcare when you need it, access to food when you need it. So why am I talking about this? Well, in the pandemic, this became incredibly obvious that we actually didn't have these in place for public health workers. There was no childcare. So all of us public health workers were doing our job even way more hours than we did before the pandemic. Our kids were home from school. The preschools for a time were even closed. All of the K through 12 schools in many places were closed. So all your kids were home. And there was no childcare for public health workers. So even though you're working all these hours, there was nobody that was taking care of your kids for you, making sure that they got what they need. So fundamentally, there's a disconnect there about what your workers need in order to do their jobs. Food. Well, when we were in person in certain types of public health crises, food is provided. You get past a certain time. If people are working past 7, 8 o'clock at night, they order in food and they pay for the food and you feed your workers. And, suddenly in the pandemic, because we were all home, there was no food, but yet people actually still have to eat, right? And somebody's got to still cook dinner. So, and maybe you have a spouse or you have a grandma or you have a grandpa, you have somebody that's there to cook. But for many people, that's not true, right? Maybe they're a single parent. Maybe their husband is deployed elsewhere, their wife is deployed elsewhere, right? So guaranteeing that people have food to eat is actually not guaranteed in a crisis and in public health emergency. So I bring these up, and these are extremes. But what I'm trying to point out here is that personnel support, right? But support for your workers can come in many different forms. And depending on how acute, how long the hours are, what exactly is going on, you need to really think about what it takes to keep your workforce operational. So getting back to more normal times, there are things like breaks and getting enough sleep. Stress is incredibly, incredibly disruptive to sleep. So if you've got a really stressed out workforce, your workforce probably not sleeping that well. Which then affects their level of anxiety. It affects their risk for depression. So sleep, stress and sleep are sort of cornerstones that are there always. It doesn't take a pandemic to have those. Then there's other types of support or time to talk about things, time to process what's going on. And whether that's processing someone getting fired or funding getting cut and losing some of your workforce, which happens all the time in public health routinely. We get grants that come and go. To other things like major failures in projects or obstacles. And that often is not something we do well in the American workplace in almost any industry, but including public health. And but yet that kind of support, helping to people to have the time to talk and process those things that come up, is a part of our emotional wellness. Also being encouraged to speak up when things aren't going well or things are going wrong. And even if that means criticizing leadership, hopefully it's done in a professional way, but that's not always something that happens in public health either. Public health, for better or worse, tends to be sort of top down. So management or leadership down, telling everybody else what to do, but not always welcoming the workforce to speak up and to voice complaints or to offer suggestions. And when you lose that, when you lose your workers feeling like they can speak up, they often don't feel valued. They don't feel that their contributions are valued, and they may not even feel that the work that they are doing is valuable anymore. So that personnel support, and it's personal when it's us, right? When we're talking about us as the workers, it's personal support. But when you are maybe a manager or a supervisor, then you're talking about supporting your personnel, right? Your multiple people that are in your line of command. So the last thing that I just want to say is that fundamentally, when we talk about supporting the public health workforce, we need to apply what we know, what you know, to your own team, your own self. So all those things that we talk about when we talk about supporting communities, supporting people that are at risk, we need to do the same and support ourselves. So investing in our own personal resilience, not resistance, our own personal resilience. And so that it looks like a lot of different things, and it can look differently for everybody. This may be community-based resilience, that meaning like you are really in touch with and well supported by a community. Could be a spiritual community, could be a family, could be friends. It could be soccer and tennis. It could be outlets like that. It could be being a musician or a singer. But whatever those things are, as a part of your own personal identity, that offer you personal resilience above and beyond sleep and food and exercise. I hope everybody's thinking about those things too. But personal resilience. Then there's your team's resilience. And part of team resilience is all those soft skills of talking to each other, doing team building, processing things together, making sure that everybody on the team feels valued. But then there's also making people feel and helping people feel successful. And this one is often missed in public health, that we really need to define success, have metrics of success, plan, be accountable, and celebrate our success. Actually, I think business world is much better about doing this than we are in public health. But really defining success and having metrics and celebrating achievements is important. And it can't be understated that this is a part of team resilience, is to feel that success together, feel that momentum together, and then celebrate that momentum and celebrate successes. There's also much more mundane things like investing in the job and the project's resilience. I've talked about grant funding. Financial stability has always been a challenge in public health, but this is also about partnerships, different organizations, communications, going out about your project, making sure that people are understanding the project, that your intended audience is greatly involved in that project and communicating about it as well. But shared ownership, shared communications, shared partnership, shared planning, all of that, and hopefully shared financing, all of that becomes a part of your own projects or your own job, your own work's resilience to weathering the changes and weathering funding streams that come and go. And then lastly, when you need it, making sure that you are investing in the regroup and rebuild process. Don't ignore things. Don't assume that, individual yoga is going to make, something like the pandemic all better. It's not. You need to invest in that individual level resilience, but you need to go back to those teams, that division, that organization, and the leadership, and really make sure that you are investing in that regroup and rebuild process in a way that is meaningful at the individual level, at the team level, at the division level, and that it's actually having its intended effect. And I don't want to say anything bad against yoga and sleep and meditation, anything. All of those things are important in terms of building personal resilience. But when we talk about really investing in the regroup and rebuild process, it's got to be much more than just investing and protecting individuals and using all of those skills that we have to harness individual resilience. It's got to be bigger. It's got to be about teams and projects and division and rebuilding confidence and resilience in the organization as a whole. With that, I'm gonna pause, and I'm gonna put myself on mute and hand the microphone over to my colleague and partner. Just a moment.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Readhead. Thanks, Heather, for that very insightful presentation. I'm going to just add a few thoughts, and I realize we are, I just want to check in with the timekeepers. When should I finish? I believe I'm supposed to be finished by 9:40. Is that correct?
You have until 9:50, so you have 20 minutes. You're good.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you. I will just redo this sharing just for a second here, just so I know. See. All right, can everybody see this presentation, which will be loading in just a moment? So I'm going to add a few of my thoughts to what Dr. Reed had just discussed, which was a great overview of all the different aspects of how our work can affect us as individuals and sort of workers in this area. And I thought, I'm an epidemiologist, so I take a slightly different view of it, but I think with some overlap and hopefully some other ideas that will sort of combine with Heather's to promote a good discussion. So I really wanted to talk a little bit about and have you all think a little bit about how the work of public health is similar and different from other areas of work. So in public health, I mean, just think about what your friends and family and the other industries that they're involved in. Some are transporting goods from one end of the country to the other. Some are building houses. Some are monitoring the water treatment plants. Some people are flying planes. Some people are designing apps. Some people are selling clothes, and just just think about how those are different. There are other people who are teachers and fire persons and working in their community health workers and other things like that. But there are some major differences in what public health is and what those other industries are doing and trying to do. So as Dr. Reed had alluded to earlier, the work of public health can be written out really in a short sentence, but it's a lot of work. So our whole reason for being around is to protect and strengthen the public's health. And that is a huge task. That is a huge remit, right? Even though building houses and building subdivisions of homes is really complicated and involves a lot of permits, or moving goods from one end of the earth to another, or putting satellites in space, all these are complicated. But I would say that our job is pretty darn complicated as well, and includes some really big, hefty issues. So these are the things that I'd like you all to consider, for yourselves, like how is your work different from other people's work? And these are my thoughts. The nature of our work is that we have these large, systemic, and seemingly intractable issues that we have been tasked with solving. Figure out how we can have no babies with congenital syphilis. Figure out how we can eradicate HIV from our country and the globe. Figure out how we can make sure nobody gets diabetes. Figure that out, come back to us with a solution, and by the way, execute it. And don't do it in a loud way. So these are really big tasks that we've been asked to do. And in fact, because we've all joined public health, we sort of set ourselves doing. And I think that's one of the reasons we joined, is because these are really important things. Can you imagine if we could eradicate HIV? Can you imagine if we could stop people from getting diabetes? It would be amazing. Could you imagine if we could protect, the mental health wellness of all under 5-year-olds in California or other places in our country or the world? It would be an incredible contribution to our world. But these are big issues. The other part about these big issues, and besides them being very big, is it means we have to constantly look at these issues in the face. We are constantly, at least this is the way I feel, I don't know if you all feel this, but constantly re-engaging with the inequities in society. We are constantly, at least me, I look around and I see roadways and I see roadways that are interfering with people walking. I see corner stores that are interfering with people eating healthily. I see education systems and housing systems that are unjust and inequitable. And it does mean that when you put on the public health hat, as Dr. Readhead alluded to earlier, it colors your world. And some of the things that you start seeing are not great. They're not happy things. And once you see things in that lens, it's hard to turn that lens off. So it does mean, as our job, we are continually re-engaging with inequities. And in fact, in my job, and perhaps in yours, I am, as part of my job, learning more, ever more about these inequities, right? It's not just enough to learn about them, but you need to learn about them in detail so that you can describe them and potentially work on them. So because we were working on large issues, it means we generally work in large groups. And I don't know if you all have seen, daycares organized or other groups of people, teams, soccer teams, or as Heather was alluding to, soldiers. It's hard to get people together in large groups and get them organized. And because we have large problems, we generally have large groups, which means we generally work in bureaucracies. In bureaucracies, as everybody knows, the responsibility is diffuse and it's very hard to get things to move. But these large problems are very hard to solve with just a small number of people. Then, in contrast to, say, other areas that work for the betterment of society, like education or medical care, we are many times not working with individuals directly. Sometimes we are, as community health workers. We might be promotores, we might be trying to, talk to someone face to face about getting a vaccine. But many times, as my job is an epidemiologist, I'm like 5 degrees removed from that. And so it does mean that you often don't see the human face of the suffering that you are trying to alleviate. You don't, and that sort of goes hand in hand with, it's difficult to measure and attribute impact. So I'm sitting in office, crunching my numbers, trying to figure out if this disease level is going up and down. But does that do anything for anybody in the real world as they're driving by on the highways or going to pick up their kids from school? Like, does that affect anything in the real world? I think because we're working on big problems, we have a large array of jobs that we do. And so some of them are very much, like myself in particular, are very much removed from actual human interface. So all of these things together make it a really challenging work environment, right? If we were building houses, not to say permitting is not hard, or, figuring out how to balance all the capital and getting all these things, but once you built the house, you can see it. When we build our houses, we say, oh, we want to reduce congenital syphilis in this county. Like, we might not see that house built for 25 years. We should be able to build that house in 5 years or maybe less if we got our act together. But these are very hard, long-term, seemingly intractable issues. So I often say to myself, public health is a little bit schizophrenic because you're asked to have your head in the clouds and your feet on the ground. And head in the clouds means we have this vision of society where disease is not that big of a deal, and that these inequities that plague us, that we've sort of baked in by our own human choices along the way in constructing our society, they're alleviated. So we have this vision, this kind of like, maybe it's completely dreamland of this society in which things are equal and we have and they're equitable, and that we have this place where people can have physical well-being and mental well-being, and they can just go on with themselves and create the beautiful things that humans can do. But we're also asked to do this in the real world with very little money, maybe some amount of jurisdiction over these problems or not. Maybe the laws are in your favor or not. And maybe you have a timeline on your grant as well. So we're asked to do this very practically. So we're asked to go for this insane, crazy vision of like a just and equitable society with hopefully disease-free, and we need to get it done with actual things in this real world. So that's why this tension for me has been one in my career that I've thought about a lot, because it's in one sense, I don't know that I'd be able to go to work every day if I didn't have my head in the clouds, this idea that I wanted to contribute to society being a better place. And I also love the practical part, but that tension, it's almost like being stretched like a silly putty. It can really become very difficult when your vision of what we want is so far away from the reality of where we are. And I use, congenital syphilis or, mental health among 5-year-olds or any of these problems. We know how far we are away from where we want to be. And that tension can be really hard. So I just want to shift a little bit gears, from sort of contemplating like sort of why are we in this mess? We chose to be in this mess. We chose to be in this profession. We want the world to be a better place, and that's what sort of, at least for me, that's the fire that keeps the engine going. But then, okay, we had a pandemic, and as somebody said to me during the pandemic took something from everyone, and it was an amazing it was a very stressful time. Obviously the amount of human life lost, the amount of families and family systems and communities disrupted was just unmanageable. And I think the reason we're having this conversation today, there were some actually very foresighted people who are looking into the future about public health workforce a long time ago and realizing that we were probably not set up for success there. But the pandemic sort of really emphasized that. For me, it sort of made it all very clear that we were not protecting ourselves as a workforce and we did not have the right alignment. So the one thing that I do want to say, and I want to say that workforce well-being is a systems issue. So, I have PTSD from the pandemic. I know a lot of colleagues have PTSD. Some people who are, have PTSD from the pandemic for other reasons not related to work. But this thing, all of this that happened to us in the workforce, we have in some ways tried to solve with, yeah, here's a yoga class you can go to. Here's a breathing exercise you can do. Here's a why don't we go home early on Friday this week or something. But all, except for the last one, all of them are putting the responsibility on the individual. And the individual is not the person who caused this issue, right? We work in a system. We work in an organization. We work in many organizations, and really, it's the organization's job to provide workforce well-being. That does not mean yoga classes are bad, but it also means that yoga classes are not enough. And so one thing that I came across during the pandemic, which I'd like to pass on to you, was this wonderful book called The Burnout Challenge by Maslich and Leiter, written in 2022. And it's not written about public health employees, even though it really fits in a lot of ways. But Maslich has been studying burnout for a long time and wrote this book very recently, but focuses on sort of 6 areas in which burnout can happen, or what are contributing areas to burnout. And essentially, these are all systemic issues. At the beginning of the book, the authors go to great pains to describe how it is not the individual's responsibility to manage workplace wellness. Like, it's not to say that the individual can't help and do the right thing, try to take care of themselves as best they can. But just like when people fought for the 8-hour workday, it's not the individual, right? So the reason people fought for an 8-hour workday is because people were working 12-hour days and Saturdays. How do you feel if you work 12 hours a day in a pin factory and Saturdays? You feel bad. Is that because you're not doing enough yoga? No, it's because the hours are just too long. And so this is why it's a very sort of, I think it's, and many others have said this before me, it's not new. It's sort of a pernicious side to personal wellness, is that it puts all the responsibility on the individual while letting the organization out of their responsibility. And so I just wanted to go down these things before I wrap up, which I thought were really interesting. So, let's go with the absence side first. So in the absence side, the things that cause burnout are unrealistic workload, lack of control, lack of appropriate rewards, which rewards in this workload is obviously how much work there is. Control is autonomy in work, which is known to be a strong predictor of workplace satisfaction, and it predicts sustainability and resilience in work. Rewards are sometimes, many times they're financial, but they can also include perks, obviously health insurance and the other things that come into it. Community, whether there's a person there that you can talk to, share your experience with. Fairness, which is, when the promotions happen, do they happen? Does it look fair? Are people given the same rights in settings where, some people are allowed to come in at noon and others are not? Like, clearly that's not fair. And values, like, are there things that are happening at work that are not ethical? Like, are there things you see that you're like, oh gosh, I can't be part of this. This is really not, this is going against my values. So those are, if those things are happening, those all together are a mix for burnout. But you can imagine the other side, the flip side, the positive side. So imagine a scenario where workload was manageable. At the end of the day, you felt like there was a lot of stuff, but you could get through it, and the deadlines were not insane. That you had control, that there was a way you could swap out tasks. You don't want to do this right now, you can maybe do it later. Okay, you can maybe trade tasks. You have to do some things you don't like, but you get to do some things you do like. The rewards, the salary and the benefits that you're getting are reasonable, and that there's community there as well. There's people there, and that fairness reigns throughout the land, and their values are in line with yours. But if you think about this, in the pandemic, all of this was completely thrown into the grinder, right? The workload went out of the window, was insanely high. Control, there was no control. Rewards, in some cases, people had salary reductions. There were others across, there were other epidemiologists who got paid overtime. I know some didn't. Community, because we all started working remotely, it meant community was instantly destroyed. Now we have online community only. Not to say that that's not community of a type, but it's not the same as being in the same place. Fairness and values, there were other things that happened during the pandemic that threatened those too. So those are sort of 6 aspects I just wanted to share. And then finally, I wanted to end on a positive note, because after all of that, you're thinking, okay, well, if it's not my responsibility as an individual worker and it's the organization's responsibility, what am I even supposed to do? So I like the one thing that Heather said earlier was, you still have to speak up and try to get the organization to take on responsibility. That's one thing we can do. But more closer to home, the things that I've been trying to do, and maybe you can as well, are to just, focus on what you can control, and you can cultivate connection at work. You still have a team and a community, even if it's remote. Maybe you come in part of the time. The second thing I thought was very interesting, I've been reading a lot about venting, because that's what we do when we get upset. We might go to a friend and complain about something, but that there's actually a lot of research about how and when venting can be productive for both people. And so I've put in a link here from Greater Good Berkeley, was, does venting your feelings actually help? I'd encourage you to read that. There's a lot of tips and tricks there, which I won't go into. And then, find something about the process that you enjoy. I don't know, that may be a little bit Pollyanna-ish, maybe there is nothing about the process you enjoy, but usually, if we fixate entirely on the outcomes and the process is just a grind, it's going to be a very long time until we get any satisfaction. So, for myself, I like doing little data cleaning things, and for whatever reason, that still makes me happy, even though it's maybe not the most fun for others, but that's part of the process that I enjoy. So I'm going to stop there. I realize I'm a little bit over time, but I will stop there. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much to Dr. Heather and Dr. Adam Readhead. Your presentation was extremely insightful, and we are honored to have heard from your experience and expertise. I will now introduce our last guest speaker for this session, Cal State University Fullerton's very own Dr. Portia Jackson Preston, who is an assistant professor of public health here at Cal State Fullerton. Dr. Jackson Preston earned her doctorate of public health from UCLA her Master's of Public Health from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and her bachelor's degree from Stanford University. Prior to her career in academia, she worked for Deloitte Consulting and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, consulted for Susan G. Komen, Orange County, and founded Active Steps Coaching.
Thank you so much. I had trouble unmuting there. So what I'm going to do and ask everyone to participate with me is just please take a moment to turn away from the screen. I actually want you to turn your camera off for a minute, okay? I would like for you to close your eyes, and I just want you to rest for a moment. I want you to notice how your body feels right now. If there's tension in your shoulders, maybe just kind of shake it out. If you're in a position where you can stand, just go ahead and stand for a moment and stretch. Because at this moment, we have been sitting for a long time, and I cannot, in good conscience, give you this presentation if I don't first care for your needs. So if you need to continue standing, that's okay. Maybe you're noticing you haven't hydrated today. You ran in here to be on time. I want you to feel free to take care of your needs in this session. If there are a few of you who feel comfortable being on screen, I would absolutely love to see your support because it actually really does help me to feel like I'm connecting with human beings. So I do understand a few of you will take a break, but please come back if you can. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. I am so excited to share my presentation with you, and I'm just going to take a moment to get it set up. So thank you for your patience. Okay, is everybody able to see my screen now? Great. All right, I'm going to ask the team to remind me of my end time so that I can be respectful of that.
You have until 10:10.
And 10. Okay, great. Let's go. We are going to do this very quickly, and I might just have to give you some of my slides. I'm asking, go ahead.
15. You have until 15.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate that. That's going to make a big difference. All right. So I'm going to have this information posted on top. I see some of you guys are logging in. I really appreciate that. I know it takes a little work to do this in Zoom. So what I'll do is for anybody that does not want to use Mentimeter, I'll bring up the chat screen and you can feel free to chat responses. If you want everyone to see it, that's great. If you just want to confide, I will not read your answer. I won't read your name. Okay. All right, so we have different ways to participate. If anyone who's new to this, I use Menti because it's completely anonymous, and I want to establish safety, that you feel like your experiences will not be used for anything other than to highlight the collective experiences that we are having. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's presentation is just a quick guided reflection on what emotional well-being means to you as a public health professional. There are some of us that before today probably haven't even heard those two in the same sentence. Anytime we're talking about wellness, it is almost always in the context of the people that we serve. And if the pandemic taught me anything, it's that we really have to take a step back and understand how not only is the work impacting us, but also the struggles that we're presented with in our personal lives. And it can be very challenging to try to find a way to integrate and be your authentic self while also trying to fulfill your professional responsibilities. I know I have a lot of my students here and people who've heard me talk before, so I have tried to make everything pretty new for you guys, okay? Until the end where I go around tools and resources. So my first question, and I need as many people to participate as possible, I need you to be really honest about why you chose to enter the field of public health.
I could go if that's okay.
Yeah, you can say it out loud if you like. Go ahead.
I think I've just always wanted to help people, you know, the cliche answer. At first I wanted to go into law, but then I realized doing something more hands-on within the community and for example, within hospitals, but also now taking all these public health classes and I'm taking health in a global society, and it's just teaching me a lot more about how much the community needs more help in terms of health. So I definitely want to take part in that.
That's so beautiful. I'm happy you shared that. So one of the wonderful reasons why I use this platform is you guys get to see each other's motivations. Most of us are in this field for really good reasons. A lot of you wanted to be able to help your community. Some of you found this after, like me, being pre-med, preclinical, and being like, wait, this isn't working for me. A lot of people want to improve the world. And for some of us, if we dig a little deeper, and I see somebody getting to this in the chat, it's because of some of the things that we were exposed to growing up. Maybe they weren't personal experiences. Maybe we saw family members go through them, but a lot of us have this driving, like, I will say in my case, it's almost a wound. Okay. So I'm going to be discussing my intersections with you all so you understand why I intentionally do this kind of work. I grew up in South Central LA. The LA riots happened when I was 9 years old. So I literally would be bused to school as I watched smoke rise down Vermont Avenue where they had burned down so many of the buildings. I didn't have the ability to process what was happening to my community as a 9-year-old the way that I would today. And I didn't even reflect on it until 2020 when everything happened with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and it just all got triggered again. And what I'm bringing to you is, yes, I came in because I was concerned about hypertension in my family and people dying before their time. But I felt this responsibility to like fix South Central LA somehow with my brain and my skills. And now as an adult, I realize how overwhelming that is. And I have had to heal from that initial wound of like being able to accept this is where you grew up from. This is what gave you the inspiration. But if you really want to be able to stay in this field and impact people, you have to heal from some of the wounds and expectations you've placed on yourself. So that's the first layer, is just looking at what we expect of ourselves. Now we're going to try to deal with some of the things that we are taking in from other people, and perhaps internalizing from the workforce and from our training, and just kind of contemplate it, okay? So before we do that, let's talk about the good part. What have you found invigorating or satisfying about working in or learning about public health? Someone in the chat says being a change maker. It's impossible to get bored. Yeah, you can always pick something new. People with similar values, seeing the impact we make, working in different communities, finding new research and answers. Yeah, good. Knowing you have the power to change the world. That's fantastic. Oh, these are really powerful answers. Okay, this is empowering. And just notice how you feel as you see so many other people talk about what they're passionate about. This is a really good opportunity for you to see that, if you've reached a dead end in the field, that is completely normal. I myself, for a little while, I didn't even want to say I was in public health. I was like, I'm in public healing because I don't know what this is. And I just kind of had to wrestle with that until I found something that, lit my fire again. So that's a continuous thing, and it's to be expected. Someone else in the chat says there's never a boring day, and it's an entire workforce coming together for the common good. It's applicable for everyday life, and it can help your friends and family. Awesome. Yeah, these are beautiful answers. Thank you for sharing. So now let's talk about the other side of the coin. What do you find emotionally draining as a professional in the field or as a student who's preparing to enter the field? Feeling like I should always have the answers, bureaucracy, bad management, the complexity of the problems, understanding and applying the concepts. I'm still there with you, and I literally teach you guys. Grant work can be overwhelming. And I want y'all to realize These are both students and professionals sharing this right now. My students often think that professionals just have all of the answers, and I need to let you know a lot of these answers are coming from the professionals themselves, okay? No concrete solutions, not a lot of opportunities. The answer is almost no. Continuous feedback that I'm not doing enough, which we then internalize and we feel like we're not enough. I deal with it every day, especially when I'm trying to do something that's important. Realizing the issues we want to solve won't get solved as quickly as we want hope. Oh my goodness. When the information gets jumbled in my head, I'm at this point now where I literally freeze and I can't even process what I'm doing. And it makes it so hard even to do good work. This is definitely coming from a professional. Complexity, siloed work, duplication of initiatives, lack of funding, lack of flexibility in funding, constant cycle of funding, how much work it takes to see the smallest changes, the daunting nature of massive problems that need solutions, the low pay for mentally taxing roles. I think this is the hardest part, realizing that you won't be able to help everyone. So for a lot of us, we can help others more than we can our own family members with the tools and skills that we have. And we have to be able to separate this. We can love people, but we cannot fix them. Okay. Yeah, being worn out because you are often witnessing other people's traumatic experiences, and that can result in something called secondary trauma. It's a traumatic response to the experiences of others. You can also develop vicarious trauma over time, and it starts to change you. You see people in the field who seem like they were so new when they started out, and now they're really jaded and like, goodness, what happened to them? I fight against that every single day. And the stress and anxiety, the disruption of sleep, I've been dealing with all of that. And it's really hard to keep going out and doing the work without acknowledging what's happening to us. And we have to share in a safe way so that we don't just blame and shame. Blame others for what they're doing, shame ourselves for not being enough. And so I feel like public health kind of has to reckon with how we have been neglecting the well-being of our workforce if we want to sustain our work. And the reason I say that is because I wrote an article, I think in last year for the Journal of Public Health Policy Management about public health workforce well-being. And in it, I was quoting these huge numbers of people that have left the field since the pandemic. And so my concern is we have all of these amazing students who want to go into the field, but what is our plan to aspire, sustain, and retain them? They should be able to feel like every time they hit an endpoint, we're going to come together and help renew and invigorate them. And that's the game plan that I want to be a part of. And that's why I feel so passionate about what we're covering in today's symposium. What are some of the expectations that you feel are placed on you as a public health professional or as a student in training? And I'll add to that, or by your community as someone who is a helper. What are some of the expectations? For some of us who have doctorates, our family assumes that we are medical doctors, even though we've told them a billion times that we are not. I know for a lot of my students, they feel that, they're supposed to not make mistakes. And a lot of that comes from messages they've internalized their entire lives. And it comes into their academic work and makes it very hard to focus on the learning. They have this feeling that people on the other side are successful because they haven't failed. And the truth is we've failed plenty. We just keep asking for help. We keep giving into this desire to help more than the desire to give up. Why is it not fixed already? Common sense is complicated. Yeah. So I wanted you all to be able to see this and know, wow, even though I didn't write this, somebody else literally wrote what I feel. I am not alone. Oh, I love what you said in the chat here. We were downplayed before the pandemic, and now we're supposed to be magicians. I will add to that, invisible, unfunded magicians. A pressure to go into the occupations that have high incomes instead of what interests you. I will tell you guys, I was terrified I was never going to make money with my interests. I'm like, health education, who's going to pay for that, So I definitely relate to that. All right. Thank you all so much. I'm going to keep moving forward, but I could linger here forever. You guys are doing a phenomenal job and I appreciate you. So let's move to some of the solutions. Imagine what is possible. How can we improve about how we do this work? How can we better support the well-being of public health professionals? And for students in training, what can we talk with you about? What can we share about how we integrate our personal professional journeys? What can we do better to model for you What does it look like to go through these different stages as a professional? Should you feel like you have to think through all of these things on your own and just carry it all? Without intending to, we sometimes just project this idea that you could have it all. And for me, that's absolutely not true. I'm in a stage of my life where I'm dealing with cognitive challenges. I am realizing my own neurodivergence, and I'm having to make major adjustments in how I live my life. And when I'm honest with my students about that, that actually builds trust that allows them to see, wow, I don't have to be perfect. So I want to call out my fellow professionals and say, are we doing a good job of that? Are we modeling that this is professional to be able to show up as a human and ask for support, to do our best and to allow that to continue to grow? So I'm going to be quiet for a moment so you can reflect on the answers that are being provided here. So a lot of these answers have to do with psychological safety. Do I feel like it's safe for me to take risks? Do I feel like it's okay for me to make mistakes? Do I feel like it's safe for me to ask questions? If I don't, I'm not going to do any of those things. Understand that it's our first time living as well. Be understanding and inspiring. That goes for all of us. Yeah. Oh, I love this. Remember that professionals and students in training are still a part of the population. Yeah. Boundaries for professionals, not expecting themselves to sacrifice themselves to complete the work they're doing. Oh, I would love to be a part of this honest conversation. Whoever said that, ESG, look at this request. Can we have an honest conversation about what went wrong with public health during the pandemic? And if there's anybody in an agency who wants to be a part of that conversation with us, please reach out. Yeah, public health is constantly changing. How do we keep up with it? So I want to thank you all so much for participating in this. And I hope that my best hope for this presentation is that I am helping to validate some of the things that you have been feeling and may have felt like this is just me and I should just get over it and this shouldn't be an issue. I will be honest with you. I unravel time and time again, and I know I project confidence. Some of you know me as having done 2 TED Talks, but I am still very much a human being. And I have a very solid, I want to actually speak to what this person is saying. Yoga and meditation is something that is a part of my life every day, and that does help me on a personal level, but I absolutely need resources beyond that. I have a rock solid team of people who support me in all aspects of my professional life, and I have a wonderful support squad in my personal life. And without those 2 things, I don't know how I would sustain this work. So I want for my students to have more professionals who are carving out for you what that looks like and who are telling you that I don't have the answers and that's okay. I love this. Allow workers to ask for what is needed from managers and leaders, which is not always the same. Yeah, these are amazing responses. As I move forward, if I've moved off of a slide that you still want to comment on, feel free to do it in the chat, okay? All right, so now I have to close up in 2 minutes. So I'm going to give you some tools because I know I've opened a can of worms. I've opened Pandora's box. Okay, so the PERMA survey is something I use when I do executive coaching with people as a part of their ongoing well-being. I personally try to take this once per quarter, and it's going to introduce you to these different aspects of professional well-being that you may not feel are being addressed for you as a student or as a professional. It's going to help you understand which of these areas are areas of growth for you, and it's going to help give you tangible ways to work on it. Understanding that positive emotions isn't about being positive all the time. It's allowing yourself to have a range of emotions, learning how to regulate them, but also intentionally introducing positivity into your life whenever you can. Okay, so I'm just skimming over that for now, but at permasurvey.org will give you that information. The second is a tool for everyone, especially those who are in leadership. This is the Surgeon General's framework on workplace mental health and well-being. There are 5 different areas that workers need to thrive. Each of these areas they go into in detail on the website, and they also give you a host of questions for reflection. I would love to see managers sit down with their teams and discuss these questions and say, how can we improve? Which of these areas are a priority for us? What issues are we dealing with? If I walk into an organization as a consultant and they tell me that they are thriving in all 5 areas, I walk right out because I don't want to be a part of the harm that they're doing. Because no place has perfect psychological safety. I want to work with people that see their people as human and want to promote and sustain their well-being. Here's a few things that you can think of related to those concepts to help support you as a professional. As I said, I'm okay. This will be recorded, so you'll be able to look at it later. But think about what helps you to experience positive emotions or cope with negative emotions. Think about the strengths that you bring to this work. Another resource I'll mention is the VIA Character Strength Survey. That's 24 different strengths that help to inform our personality, our values, our character, and everyone has them to a certain extent. So if you take that free survey, notice I said the free version, I'm not giving you anything that costs money, you're going to get an idea of what your strengths are and how can you engage them in the work. For example, I know I'm over time, I'm going to try to close this in 1 minute. When I am doing work with my department, just the day-to-day stuff that keeps us running, I have to tap into every value related to justice, which is teamwork, fairness, and leadership. That gets me through that work, okay? Thinking about having a network of mentors and relationships that support you, not just one person, finding meaning and purpose, celebrating your accomplishments, but also helping yourself to stay curious and open so you can persevere to reach your long-term goals. And then, of course, taking care of your health to restore your energy. So that's a more comprehensive version of wellness. I'm absolutely over time, so I have to fly through this to the end. I want to remind you that it's really about meeting yourself where you are, figuring out what you need, finding out what is an appropriate way to care for yourself today, and then reminding yourself that you're not alone and we thrive as we heal collectively. These resources are on my website for free. They will teach you how to develop a wellness journey. We're focusing on emotional today, but I just want to acknowledge that it's part of a more comprehensive picture. My final thoughts, it's normal to have days where you feel discouraged, stuck, or alone. This is where self-compassion and connection with others can be helpful, especially when we struggle to be compassionate with ourselves. There's no easy fix for the problems we face, but tools, strategies, and resources can provide space for us to gain perspective and explore what we need. Lastly, when you're overwhelmed, break your task into small steps, let go of what you can, and as often as needed, reach out for support and help. And I will just end by putting my contact information on the slide if you have any questions, or if you want to access my TED Talks, you can just search for them on YouTube. Thank you all so much for giving me this time today to share with you.
Thank you, Dr. Preston. As always, you always have the best heart and mind, and we are so grateful to have you talk at our events. We will now finally move on to our last guest speaker, Amanda Wilson-Eck, the Program Coordinator for Transitional Aged Youth Programs such as NAMIOC since 2020. She has since become the Youth Programs Manager, working closely with the Orange County Transitional Aged Youth students to help share their mental health stories and equip teens and youth with coping skills and resources to support with their own mental well-being. We will now hear from Amanda.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. So yes, I'm Amanda. I work with NAMI Orange County, and I have worked with NAMI since 2020. I had the unique privilege of being a part of our Transitional Age Youth Program, and it was one of the first times we've been able to create a very comprehensive program for our students in Orange County. And where I've gotten to see the growth of this program and what we're continuing to do with it is really amazing. And it's what makes me really thankful to be able to support our community and give back. All right. So a little bit about NAMI. So NAMI does stand for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We have affiliates and branches across the United States. Like I said, we service all of Orange County here. So we have a very wide demographic that we do serve. And with our mission, our aim is to really provide emotional support, education, and resources for families and those affected by mental illness. So we're here to address and provide that support for anyone. Is really it. There's no like defining you have to have a diagnosis to be a part of our services. Some of them that are here, may just be struggling. Some may just want some extra support. Some want to know how to support others in their lives. And that's what we're here to do. Many of our programs are offered at no cost. So we try and keep this very accessible for our community to be a part of. A lot of our programs that we've been able to create and run are in collaboration with our entire community. So taking the feedback, taking the needs that our community has and turning that into services and programs that they can then take care of and be a part of. With mental illness, it's something that I think we've seen a lot more addressed, especially after this pandemic, but it is something that does affect many individuals every single year. And the biggest goal of our organization is to showcase that, you are not alone and that you can live a very healthy, fulfilling life, even if you do have a diagnosis. It's not something that has to prevent you from achieving your goals, from being happy and healthy. We do, with my group, I do serve our transitional age youth, so 16 to 24. There's a lot of transitions and a lot of big changes that happen in our lives during that time. And that's usually around like 22 is when you start seeing a lot of signs and symptoms of potentially a mental health condition. And so some of these stats that we have here, 1 in 5 US adults experience mental illness. So it is something that is very common. 1 in 25 US adults experience serious mental illness at some point in their lives, and 17% of our youth, 6 to 17 years old, experience a mental health disorder. So it is something very common. It's something we want to be talking more about because there is a lot of stigma that does come with mental illness. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings. There's a lot of unknowns. And so that's where we come in to try and provide that education, share a lot of individual stories. That is a huge common thing throughout every single program that we have, is we're trying to be more comfortable talking about our experiences, talking about our stories, so that way other people can, identify, connect, and see that they're not alone in going through what they're going through. So we've been around since 1980s here in Orange County, and then many of these programs are kind of our signature core. So these are a lot of our classes that we do every single year. And we really couldn't do it without the support of our community, because we have community members who have taken these classes, been inspired, and then they get trained to help teach and pass on what they've learned to the community. So there's a lot of opportunities there within our community to kind of give back from what they've learned and gained from our programs. All of these programs help serve different assets of our community. So we have peer-to-peer. For individuals that have been diagnosed, they can connect and find a support system with other peers who have a diagnosis. Family members, they get to connect with other family members and create that support system for them. One that I do very frequently is Ending the Silence. That's for our students to just learn more about general mental health. What are those signs and symptoms? How can they help themselves as well as maybe a loved one if they're noticing it? And with each and every one of these, all of our facilitators come with have a story that they share. How has mental health and mental health conditions impacted their lives? Where are they going now? So you can see that there's hope at the end of that. Within our last year serving Orange County, we've been able to do so much and grow so much as an organization. And many of that isn't thanks to our community that we have. So this last year, we were able to teach over 220 programs, serving over 17,000 people in Orange County. And we have a small staff. We do a lot, but we really do that with the volunteers and with our community to help that support, to bring in these programs to their organizations, to help us come in and teach. And also teach some of these classes themselves, get trained, go through that training so they can give back. So like I said, with NAMI, we can be found across the nation. Some of those signature programs are things that you'll see at every single NAMI across the county. But with us particular, we're here to serve Orange County, and we have very unique needs that, maybe another city doesn't have. So we have the opportunity where we do get to create programs based on the feedback of our community. Hearing things of what do you need? What support is needed in your life? And that's where we're able to go after grant funding to help create and support these programs, through the state, county levels. We also do it through just the donations that our community gives us. So there's a lot of ways that we're able to create and then grow a lot of these programs, like the one that I oversee. So we do offer a wide range of services like peer mentoring. Where our organization doesn't do therapy services, we do have peer mentoring because we do see that there's a great need of having that emotional support. With these, we're able to tailor them based on the community or the area that they're serving. So we have things like Silver Companions that are all for individuals 55 plus, so they can have that support needed. That's one of a new program that we've been creating and is debuting this year, which is really exciting. We have Peer Connector that's open to our general community. We want to meet you where you're at. So whether that's talking on the phone, through Zoom, or meeting in person somewhere, if you just want to have that chance to talk and have that support system, it's there. We're also in like hospital settings, so you can also find us there to help provide that support if maybe you've received a diagnosis or you're going to go to inpatient care. We're there to provide that support of, hearing out what are your concerns, what are you maybe worried about, and maybe we can help ease that. So that's with our NAMI Connects. And then now we're pairing with Cal Optima to provide additional services so we can have that support. Maybe once you get out of an inpatient setting that you can continue on, and we have that person there to help you out. So my programs here with teens and young adults, we have a wide range where we've been able to create based on working with some of these students directly. Really, our program started with our NAMI on campus clubs. This is a chance for our students to really talk about the challenges and issues that may be happening on your specific campuses, because that it can be very different from city to city or school to school. So with these clubs, they're all student run, and it's a chance for them to talk about, what are some of the concerns they're having, what advocacy can maybe they do on their campus, maybe they're a hub of, they know what are the services available to in like their behavioral health centers and what's available to the students, and they're going to go out to share that. So it's giving them those tools to advocate on our students' behalf. With many of our programs, so with mine, we are relatively new for our organization. When we got started, we had an amazing game plan laid out of this is exactly what we're going to do to, do student services. We're going to be on the ground on these campuses. We're going to be doing all of this. And then the pandemic hit and we went, oh, never mind, let's scratch all of that. And we had to start completely over. And so that's working with the students that we were able to work with that volunteer and go, what do you need? How can we maybe help you now that we're remote and we're stuck on Zoom? So that's where happy hour came out of. They went, I just need a moment to get out of my head of what is going on, and I need just to not think about anything else. And so we created happy hour to give you that moment to disconnect and maybe explore, what makes you happy, what can be your self-care, because I know that's a buzzword we hear all the time now. But what's that thing that's going to spark joy, give you kind of that reset? It's also a chance for our students to, take the helm and show others what brings them happiness and joy. So, not only are you hearing from us that are trained or, do other things, you're hearing from your peers, and getting to see what makes them happy, excited, etc. From happy hour, that's where we experience, okay, maybe there's times we need to be a little serious and we need to have a space where people can get questions answered. So we came up with honest hour where we could create panels and have people connected to community resources, maybe even outside of what we have at NAMI. So I bring in other community organizations. I bring in experts in the various fields. I bring in peers so you can hear their firsthand experience and get questions answered, whatever you might have in a non-judgmental way, and get that advice, get connected to resources, because, maybe what we have isn't quite the right fit, but we can get you connected somewhere else. Things like homework halftime, where we realized, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, but what are our students going through? It's finals, and it's a stressful time, and it's sometimes not a fun time, but, encouraging you and reminding you to take those tools that you have to cope with the stress, and maybe take a moment to take that break from studying. Because I know when I was a student, I would have like the 24-hour just go, and then you would break. Trying to avoid that. With the pandemic too, because a lot of our stuff turned to remote, we were able to create some podcast series that we did. So we came up with 2 of It's Okay to Feel and Anxiety Sucks. With It's Okay to Feel, it's very much based on, having experts in fields come in, connecting to resources, sharing of stories, and recognizing our feelings are valid and it's okay. Whereas like Anxiety Sucks, that's actually hosted by 2 college students that we have on staff. Actually, now they just graduated. But many of the themes that came up within that podcast was, what do I do? What is next? I don't know. And to realize it's okay to maybe not know, and explore some of those maybe general anxieties that we might face on a day-to-day, and be okay to talk about it, to address it, and maybe hear that someone else is going through it too. Some other presentations that we offer for our community to be a part of and to learn more about mental health. We have things like Care Together and knowledge forums. A lot of these address, what are the services available in our area? What are, what we address certain mental health disorders even. So I know like our bipolar and psychosis one is a really popular one that we do routinely. A lot of great presentations that happen there that are done on Zoom, so they have access to the greater community. Hope and Recovery addresses that intersection of substance use and mental health. That way, we can locate more resources and hear people's stories. What were their experiences? What did they go through? I know I'm running up on time, but we have like crisis intervention training. So finding all these different communities, because mental health does affect more than just a single demographic, a single community, a single age range. So a lot of our services you'll see try to address all those different areas that may come into or may experience mental health. So with like crisis intervention, this is us working with our first responders, EMTs, dispatchers that, may come across someone who is in a crisis, and how can they provide more empathetic care? How can they, address them in a better light? So, we offer trainings to specific groups. I myself, I'm mental health first aid trained. So this is something that I do also within the community to teach you, how can you help and support your community members? How can you support someone if they're going through a crisis? Because that's not something we're usually taught how to do. So to take those tools and move forward with it. A huge part of what we do also is just our support services. So we do offer support groups, once again, for the different communities that may be affected by this. So whether that's through our, whether you have a diagnosis, you can find your groups, family members can find their groups. And then we have our Warm Line, which is probably the largest program that we do offer. This is our free and confidential telephone service that provides emotional support, as well as gets our community connected to resources. So if you're having a really bad day, you're struggling, you just need someone to vent to or get things out, that's that line you can call and just have someone who will listen to you. And sometimes that's all we need, is just someone to listen to us. Maybe you're starting out and trying to find services, and it can be really overwhelming sometimes to just start that search. You have that support system there where they'll go, okay, let's find something for you. Maybe it's a program that we have at NAMI, maybe it's some other program, but they can get you connected and get you the support that you need. So really good resource there for everyone to have. Here we go. This is Warm Line. So it's 24/7. It's not something we were always able to do. That's relatively new. I think within the last 4 years, we were able to transition that to 24/7, which was a huge accomplishment for us, because it just shows how much these services are needed by our community. And now we're able to serve more and more. Even now with the Warm Line, we've been able to expand the languages we're now offering. So now we have it available in Spanish, in Vietnamese, to better serve all the vast communities that we do have here. So what can you do to kind of leave us off? What can you do to support community resources? I always say, first and foremost, you can start small. Just educate yourself about what resources are out there. If you have someone who's struggling in your life, what numbers do you know that you can maybe refer them to? Knowing 988, it's a really helpful, easy one. Maybe give them the Warm Line number. Just having that kind of base knowledge of what is available so you can help someone if they're struggling, or even for yourself. Volunteer and get involved. Organizations like NAMI really need the help and support of our community and volunteers. We do so much, but we do so much because we have the support of our volunteers to help us out. So get involved with an organization you're passionate about. Attend mental health community events. This is another great opportunity to really learn more about mental health and maybe learn what's being changed, what's being updated, and stay in the know. You can also, take a mental health training to learn how to support yourself and others. Like with mental health first aid, Dee Dee Hirsch is another one who has amazing trainings that they offer. So check around. There's usually chances where you can find them for free as well. And then advocate for improved mental health services and policies. So, on your campus, you can start small there of, maybe what's going on there and what can we advocate for. Election years, it's another great time to advocate, be aware of what's happening and advocate for the improved services. And with that, thank you all so much for having me here today. I really do appreciate it. And I'll leave our website in the chat there. So if you're interested in what we do, you can find more there.
All right, thank you so much to our 4 guest speakers. So now we're going to take questions for the next 15 minutes or so. Unfortunately, both Dr. Adam and Heather Readhead had to leave, but we will be taking questions for both Dr. Preston and for Amanda. If anybody has questions, please raise your Zoom hand and we'll call on you. Or if you have any comments, just whatever.
I'll just say first for Dr. and Dr. Readhead, they both have LinkedIn profiles and you can feel free to reach out directly there and connect with them.
Well, I do have some questions for you guys that I've drafted up beforehand. I have 2. The first one, oh, I lost it. Where is it? Is as a healthcare professional, what are some trends and changes that you've noticed within your personal field of practice that you have seen since the COVID-19 pandemic, and how has that changed since then?
Are you speaking towards the mental health needs of professionals or what specifically?
Both of you, both your fields of public health.
So how my field has changed since the pandemic? Well, you all are students, so it really centers around you. I think collectively, we went through a cultural shift, and I mean all of us, that we will not understand for a very long time. So we can talk about socioeconomic challenges and learning, but that's not an individual experience. It's a collective experience. And what I try to do right now is to not rely on someone else bringing me the data, but to reflect on what I am witnessing day by day in the classroom. And at the very least, I try to acknowledge it. If I don't have a solution, I can at least validate the changes I see happening. And then I try to ask people, can you tell me more about what you're experiencing? Can you tell me more about the kind of support that you need? I just came back from a trip that I've been doing with students since 2017, and this group just really impacted me in such a profound way, and I realized what it was on day 3. These are people that, they were all seniors or first or second year MPH students. That means that they all spent a significant portion of their college years when they would have been out socializing and getting to know people and having a good time, mostly being confined to their bedrooms and, living with family and all of these things. And from what I've witnessed, it's made them very reluctant to connect. And so they come to campus, they walk around and they mind their business, they keep their head down. There might be a handful of people they feel like they can trust on campus. And beyond that, they are not opening up. And what I saw was, once we established a bit of psychological safety in the group, they just all flooded each other with love and acceptance. And they were teasing each other like they were siblings who knew each other for years. So I think I just want to address that, yes, we're seeing challenges, but I believe in the healing and I believe in the reassurance of everyone that we're going to find a new way through this. I try to tell my students from my own experiences with neurodivergence that I think are two reasons why it's really come up. Yes, one is the pandemic and how it impacted my life, but the other is where I am in my lifespan as a human being. And I'm in an area that no one talks about. Apparently, a lot of women get to this point where they just have a lot of brain fog and fatigue, and everything's changing. And I'm an elder millennial, by the way. So I am part of a more vocal generation that's like, I'm not going down in silence. So as I tell my students, like sometimes it's really hard for me to grade your stuff because I'm having challenges processing information. Their responses are, I feel seen, I feel validated, and that makes me feel good. So yes, I've seen the data, but I think it's what I do with the data that matters, especially the things that we won't know for like a decade to come. What is the opportunity? Yes, here's the challenge. What is the opportunity? And for me in my classroom, it's let's focus on connection, transformation, and collective healing. And I will acknowledge, Amanda, before you respond, that NAMI is the very first health resource I ever learned about when I decided to teach my students about mental health. And that's why I'm so excited that you're here.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I loved everything that you said there. I think that's what we're seeing too, working with students, is a huge part is that connection. I think that's what a lot of them talk about with us. We, started with our high school leaders because they wanted more opportunities to grow their skills. We created a group for them to come together. And so many of them were like, how do I just connect with the other people in our group? How can we have more support for them that's not on our phone or on an app? So that's what we're starting to see more with the students is they want more opportunities where they can be in a safe place and connect with other people. I think too, what we're kind of leaning towards and moving towards is working closer with various school systems. So maybe what are areas that we can help fit in and help support and bring mental health into the classroom more. So is it just through the activities? Do you have like a calm corner in your classroom? I've been seeing that in some of the high schools. It's amazing. How can maybe we start these conversations so students do feel like they can open up more? I think we're in a place now with mental health that people are more comfortable talking and maybe talking about it generally, but actually seeking out and taking that next step to get services. I think that's where we're at now of that encouragement and that education piece with our students. So it's out there and it's for you to take advantage of, and no one's gonna shouldn't feel shame for having to seek out these services or find that help. It's okay.
And Bethany, anecdotally, I'd like to address professionals as well. So I'll disclose at this point that Dr. and Dr. Readhead are longstanding friends of mine. I actually went to grad school with Adam, and I am the godparent to their two twin boys. So I say all that to say that like the inspiration for the article I wrote in the Public Health Workforce actually came from conversations that we had over text messages and phone during the pandemic. Adam was deployed for a significant portion and away from his two young kids. Heather was working as a doctor, and there was this like, how do we make a plan to make sure that, as couples, we support each other to get through this time? What is missing that our workforce isn't providing to us that will decimate us, because we felt that pressure happening. So what you saw today is years of reflection that they've had since that point. And they did this today because they had a determination of, we're going to start doing this differently. I'm going to make sure that other people don't struggle the way that I did. So I try to have conversations with professionals, but it's really important that you make sure there's safety before you do that. I had to tell you that we're close and personal friends because we really went there together, and there's a decade to support that, So if you're a leader and you're wanting to have these conversations, I have free discussion guides for my TED Talks. Do things like that. Use me telling all of my business so that you don't have to go ask your people personal questions. But I talk to my students about my neurodivergence to make it safe for them to say, okay, she's had anxiety and depression. She deals with that stuff now. Maybe I can be a professional and have those things. So I want to encourage anybody who's a professional that wants to have these conversations that you must do so in a container of safety, and you're not encouraging people to bear all of themselves.
you so much. I actually have one more question. And you kind of already covered it through your talks, but if you guys had, both you, Dr. Preston and Amanda, if you had any few words of advice, what would they be to like students?
Amanda, would you like to go first this time?
Oh, sure. That's a really good question there for advice. I think with where I would have liked when I was a student is having a little bit of grace and maybe some just, knowing that it's okay that things maybe didn't go according to my plan. I know that happens so much with students, but I think we do take it a little bit harder when you're like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm in college for my 5th year instead of 4. And it didn't happen that way. Maybe you had to start off at community. Maybe you changed your major halfway through and have to do that start over process. That's all okay. Like, I think we have it so hard that we have to hit milestones at certain times, and then we kind of beat ourselves up if we don't hit it there. But knowing that each of our journey is different, each of our journey is okay, and just finding acceptance in that and grace within yourself for going through different things.
You're muted, Dr. Preston.
Thank you for your patience. Okay. So what I want to add to that great answer is, and this is to students as well as professionals, please meet yourself where you are. Every single day, you are a different evolution and expression of yourself. I came back yesterday from a great trip, and I just felt shame for not being done with everything. And I just had a really hard time being gracious with myself. And I teach this stuff. And I don't want to meet myself where I am. I want to be cruel and rigid and perfectionist, and I want to resist wellness. I study wellness because I resist it, and it's terribly hard for me. So to expect yourselves to be good at all of this is actually not professional, because perfection doesn't exist. And anyone that is mentoring you, that is pushing you towards perfection, you have to use your kind inner advocate to resist that, even if you don't confront them on it directly. You have to decide that for you, you want to be around for the long term in this field. So you're going to find ways to sustain and care for yourself. But it goes back to my very basic advice. Meet yourself where you are today. What do you need today? And you have to be able to stick around so that your best can get better. So, and the last thing is, the adults don't have it figured out either. I know a lot of you are adults, but you know what I mean, right? We're all still piecing it together. So find people that are safe to talk to about that process.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful. Like, good to know that both of you also struggle the same things that students struggle as well. So now, after that concludes our first speaker session, now we're going to take about a 7-ish minute break. So you guys can turn off your cameras, go to the restroom break, get a drink of water, a snack. We'll come back at 10:55. Okay, thank you.